Now, away from the markets, foremost economist and senior lecturer at the Lagos Business School, Dr. Doyin Salami, has been speaking on the need for Nigeria's private sector to double its 13% investments ratio to GDP. Dr. Salami shared his views at a recent meeting with stakeholders at the Nigerian Stock Exchange, where he analyzed the state of the Nigerian economy.
We're already seeing oil prices ease. I suppose we could perhaps hope that the Donald may take on the North Koreans and spike oil prices, but I'm not sure that will happen. And so the likelihood, therefore, is that we may not see oil prices head north significantly of where they are as far as this year is concerned. Oil quantities, on the other hand, are looking good. I think we are currently at about 1.92 million barrels of crude oil a day. The Niger Delta is rested, and to that extent, the revenue profile looks to be interesting going forward. Not significantly large sums. Don't forget, we used to do $104 per barrel of crude oil. In terms of international capital movements, this really is for me the biggest concern. In recent times, the movement or the creation of a window for international investors and a lot of noise about inflows. And I wonder whether this is the same country where $20, $23, $24 billion of annual FPI flows, forget the FDI flows, FPI flows, and now we're doing $1 billion, $2 billion here and there, and we are celebrating as though Uhuru has arrived. As far as I'm concerned, we still haven't gotten to that place where we need to stay. And I will come back to that in a short while. Diaspora, well, we take that as given. If you look at this, what drives the Nigerian economy that I have put up, there are about 5 different buckets to consider. Activity, cost. At the heart of it, though, is policy. Beyond policy, we recognize financial markets and then the socioeconomic development of Nigeria. Where are we in those spaces, and where might we be going? Well, let me just quickly move this ahead. If you look at activity, we seem to have turned the corner. Oil growing, even though the last GDP number suggests that Nigeria is still shrinking, but the rate of shrinkage much, much reduced. The prospects don't look that bad. However, there are a couple of things that I think I need to draw your attention to. The first is that this economy remains very concentrated, because when we talk about innovating our way out of recession, Nigeria is pretty much out of recession. If it doesn't happen, if the numbers don't reflect that in Q2, they will certainly reflect that in Q3. But the challenge is not coming out of a recession. That's too limited a challenge, or too limited an ambition. What's more interesting is what happens to us once the numbers show the positive that we are looking for. If you look at this, what Nigeria is an economy dependent on 6 major sectors. There are 46 in the GDP numbers, but we're dependent on 6. 6 of them are 80% of total output. Agriculture is about 23%, and that's the largest sector. The second largest sector is trading, which is about 17%, so you're already 40% done. Beyond trading is telecoms, which is about 11%. Then you have manufacturing, which is, then you have oil and gas, which is 9%. You have manufacturing, which is 10%. Real estate, which is somewhere around about 7%. And that's our economy gone. So one of the big challenges around our innovation out of a recession is how do we continue to grow those drivers, those output drivers for the economy? Because right now, we are still a very output concentrated economy. If you look at the issues around costs, again, a lot of noise around inflation coming down. But I caution that please be mindful of how you interpret the inflation numbers. Yes, inflation is down 16.3, my apologies. But look at the month-on-month numbers, and they continue to rise. And those rising month-on-month numbers are actually telling us something, because those are the more recent reflectors of where costs are. Costs rising for Nigeria puts us at a competitive disadvantage. Please let us understand that. You cannot have Nigeria's inflation at 16% when Africa's inflation is somewhere around about 5.5%, 6% on average. That creates a major competitive disadvantage for Nigeria. Let me add to this, that at 16%, anything beyond 12% in terms of inflation is very bad for Nigeria. Why? It actually adversely affects economic growth. So we've got to rein back inflation if we are going to sustainably grow this economy. Beyond that, what are the other elements of cost? Oh yes, I shouldn't forget the exchange rates. Ah yes, finally Nigeria has made it. We are 300 and I think it's 73 on NAFEX. But don't forget again, we've got about 6, or is it 5 exchange rates, from 305 through to about 370 or thereabout. The person I feel most in sympathy with is the Honorable Minister of Finance, because I keep wondering how much her revenue profile would improve if you had a consolidated exchange rate and it was really market determined. Everybody says they would like interest rates to come down, and that of course is the third leg of the cost profile. You want interest rates to come down. Forgive me, I'm a university academic. Interest rates, from what they taught us and what we teach, are driven by 3 things. First, the balance of demand and supply. Second, the risk of asset erosion, which is inflation. And third, the project risks, or the risk of the economy generally. Let's deal with all 3. Risk of asset erosion. If inflation is 16% and you want interest rates to come down, then you've got to think about bringing inflation down. If the biggest borrower or the most secure borrower is borrowing at somewhere between 14 and 18%, and by the way, why, I wonder, should the same government issue instruments of the same tenure at different rates? Just in case you hadn't figured it out, DMO 90 days, 14%, central bank 90 days, 18%. Interesting, and I wonder why. But the key point for me is that imagine you had an exchange rate into market determined. The government could actually borrow externally, taking pressure off the domestic market. But it would then funnel its borrowings back into the domestic currency market, enabling the currency not just to stabilize, but perhaps to even appreciate. And so there are still some dissonances within our policy environment that we need to take account of and we need to deal with. Failure to deal with these really will create difficulties for us. Now, for me, this is probably the most interesting of all the graphs that my team of research assistants have put together. And the one I like the most, or which is the source of the biggest worry, these 2. What this is telling you is that even though the economy is beginning to find its way out of a recession, consumers are under significant pressure. If you look, wages and salaries are still shrinking. The rate of growth of wages and salaries are still shrinking. Beyond that, costs rising, activity still in negative territory, means corporates are also still under pressure. Corporates are also still under pressure. So 2 of the largest components of spending in the Nigerian economy are continue to be For my money, this is something that we cannot ignore for much longer. I'm not sure that the Honorable Minister of Finance will forgive me if I say that looking at wages might be something that has to be done. Any which way you like it, minimum wages, last reviewed in 2011, have lost 50% of their value at the very least. Now, of course, I do understand where she'd be coming from and who's going to pay for that. But the question remains, consumers are under pressure, and we are going to have to find a way, going to find a creative way of taking consumers out of pressure. It'd be nice if state governments actually paid salaries as and when due, but I suppose that is probably asking for too much at this point. Now, on the policy side, those of us on the monetary side are now beginning to behave ourselves. At least I can cheerfully stand here and be very happy about that. Once upon a time, monetary policy spoke from both sides of its mouth. On the one hand, we raised interest rates supposedly in a tightening mode, but at the same time, we released liquidity as though it was going out of fashion. Fortunately now, we are beginning to get a hold of liquidity, reining it in, and therefore hopefully heading for some level of stability. Of course, that, for my money, you cannot have done what we did between 2015 and the end of 2016 and complain about the outcomes. Imagine, November 2015, money supply M1 was 6.5 trillion. By the end of December 2016, money supply M1 had become about 11 trillion. And then people tell me that, the currency is weakening, inflation is rising. And I scratch my head wondering whether the same economics I read is the same economics that they refer to. If you do what we had done, you get what we got.